Yeah, I find man, diet's so friggin'
important.
It's so hard too.
Yeah.
Like I eat like crap on the weekend.
All right.
Rock and roll.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. This is episode 3. I'm Tim.
I'm Chris.
And we're talking about remakes today. So I thought we'd start the conversation with one of my favorite topics, which is the Disney film franchise, because I think that they've kind of become a giant in the film industry as of the past 5 years or so. And I think they're a really good example of remakes in film.
Right.
So, for example, when I was thinking about the list of points I wanted to discuss today, I realized that a lot of the movies that I've watched that have been originals as well as remakes have been Disney movies. And I don't know if that's true for you, but I've also realized that Disney is really good at telling stories and then retelling stories and then telling another version of their stories. Like you can see they started doing their live action
remakes of their,
as well.
Yeah, of their films, yeah. A little bit lesser so. I mean, Disney for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because I have kids, right, it's, I'll get more animated stuff and I'll get even the live adaptation since it's very kid-friendly, right?
Right.
But before that, I've kind of delved into more of the traditional remakes in the sense, like just straight remakes of film. You've got your, I've seen The Fly a whole bunch of times. That's a remake of 1950s, just sci-fi-esque, like the post-atomic, like the atomic age kind of science fiction. That and the Thing as well, The Blob. But so I've seen a lot of those and a lot of the recent remakes around westerns and stuff like that too.
Interesting thought. I mean, the Oscars or the Academy Awards, whatever you want to call it, they just passed by, but there was a lot of movies there that came out in the past year that people haven't seen, but almost all of those are original stories with say, a couple odd examples like Mad Max, which are a continuation of a franchise.
Yeah, and that's almost like a quasi reboot, sequel, remake-ish.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you know any history on it, but they wanted to make it about 10 years ago, and they wanted to have Mel Gibson come back for it, but that never came to fruition. Yeah. Apparently, it had something to do with the economic crisis, and the conversion rates or whatnot, their budget just ballooned, and they couldn't get it made. So it's been in development hell, and then of course Mel Gibson did what he did later on, basically went crazy.
Yeah.
And so they end up recasting, and it's
in a lot of ways, it's a new movie, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times though, I find that films will go out of their way to distance themselves from the word remake, reboot, because they don't want it, because of, as you mentioned, such a negative connotation to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you pull off the top of your head, I'm sure you probably have like half a dozen remakes that you've seen in the past 5 years that you think they're terrible, right? Like one of the ones that comes to mind for me is The Transporter Refueled. I just saw that recently and I reviewed it, and it was not fun at all. Like I've seen 3 of those movies. I mean, obviously they're action, and I think from my perspective, I've seen a lot of action remakes as opposed to anything else, but that's just my tastes.
Yeah.
Whereas, The Transporter Refueled, the story doesn't really hold up, and it feels kind of like it's James Bond.
And it's missing Jason Statham. And let's be honest, he's pretty badass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he might not be the best actor ever, but you almost always have a fun time with him because that's just his style, right? He's fun, right?
Right.
I mean, what I think remakes get into problems oftentimes is they'll lose the spirit of the original, or it takes something. Oftentimes with action movies, they'll shoot for a much wider audience or make it more homogenized. So we go from from R to PG-13. A lot of people maybe make a bigger deal of it than it is, but it's seen as that homogenization, right, of the original. The RoboCop remake, the Total Recall remake, any action movie of the 90s that they've done. Point Break, same thing, right?
Yeah, and maybe we should clarify what we mean by remake. So obviously from my perspective, I think a remake is something that takes an existing story and tells that story again, but this time maybe from a slightly different angle, or in the case of a film like Psycho, shot for shot, but with updated visuals or whatever.
Yeah.
But a retelling or a reimagining of a story. That's effectively what I think of when I think of remakes.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like remakes have their value, right? If you are just Psycho is a great example. You just brought it up, where it's a shot-for-shot remake. What's the point?
Yeah.
What like really? What's the point, right?
Yeah.
There's no new take on it. There's no new angle. There's no new artistic endeavor with it. It's exactly the same movie, just in color. Something like True Grit or 310 to Yuma or something like that, where it's a the original's a classic, but they put enough of their own spin on it where it adds value. It can still add value to the story. You can still get something for. They have different character motivations, or there's a little bit more gray area on it, or something like that, right?
Yeah. So like a good example, I think, would be if you were to look at, say, Seven Samurai versus the Magnificent Seven. Now, granted, I haven't seen the Magnificent Seven, so that maybe that's a bad example for me to bring up because I can't talk.
No, it's. I'd say it's probably pretty apt, but yeah.
But it's the same story told from a different era and then with a different cast, and you would be surprised to watch that and not realize that it's the same story, right? Like, so that's a good example of a remake.
Yeah, and you sort of branches the conversation into a different type of remake where you take a foreign film and then remake it for a North American audience. Sometimes they can be good with Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
Or say Let the Right One In to Let Me In.
Yeah.
Again, has its own value. The Ring is one of those divisive ones. Seems to be pretty, or The Grudge.
Yeah.
A lot of true, I would say probably horror enthusiasts would say the original probably is better.
Yeah.
North American, they tend to go for more jump scares. It's less psychological and thought out.
Yeah.
But again, that can be different too.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of horror movies, I that's another area of remakes where I think that happens, and maybe it's just because in our minds, horror movies spit out all these, stories and retellings of the stories so regularly. But I think that's just how it's been branded for us. But, like you watch your Nightmare on Elm Street and your Halloween and Friday the 13th and The Hills Have Eyes and The Crazies. Like there's countless examples of it, right?
In horror, it's
really
horror has a really awful track record to it with to remakes as well. Most of the time, again, because of the built-in audience for a certain, especially if you have a horror icon like Freddy or Jason or Michael Myers, you'll have they'll just see a horror icon and we'll just be able to look at the quality of the originals, not looking at, say, the spirit of it. It's tongue-in-cheek on purpose. And so they'll just sit out, well, we can just make a horror movie with this high icon in it and it'll make money. So again, they miss the spirit of the original.
Right.
And again, but sometimes it can, like the first Halloween, again, divisive, but okay. Rob Zombie has his own voice.
Right.
So, and we kind of delved a little bit more into the nature of a psychopath behind him, sort of.
Yeah, and again, I just said The Evil Dead, but I think of that as a really good example where the original Evil Dead is a purposefully campy film, which we talked about last time, right?
Exactly.
But the remake is more of a true horror movie, right?
Yeah.
And it's, for my money, I actually thought it was really enjoyable. Like
I enjoyed it too, and I'm a huge, as I say last time, huge Evil Dead fan. I love them. I know a lot of people hated it, but I really enjoyed it.
Right. And so that's where it's sometimes, and again, we'll probably talk about this a bit through the discussion, but when you watch remake, you feel like it's not worthwhile to see remakes, but a lot of times what happens with remakes, and this is, again, my opinion, but you'll find that the storytelling actually can be reinvigorated by a remake. And it makes those icons, as you said, a little bit more well known in the public, and people go back and watch the movie that they would have never seen because it came out 20 years before they went to movies or whatever. Right?
Yeah, and the Evil Dead example again, it did well enough that we got Ash vs. the Evil Dead out of it, which is amazingly awesome. We never thought we'd have a continuation of that story, but then here we are, right? So yeah, sometimes it's worth it even from that perspective, right? So I feel like they can be valuable as long as you have something different to say.
And it gives those stories more of a cult following, I said already, but reinvigorates, or it actually, I think in some cases actually expands the universe, like the Batman movies. You know, like you watch those. And I know I didn't really want to go on the superhero road, but you watch the Batman movies, and how many times have we seen? How many different Batman have we seen? Like, what is it, 4 now? Coming up on 5.
Well, it depends what you
from
Adam
films.
West, I guess. Eh?
Okay, for films.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but Batman from the TV show, they did make a movie.
Okay, so then we're at 6.
Right.
But you watch those movies, and you watch a Batman movie, and you say to yourself, okay, this is. I understand that this is a remake, but that's not necessarily means that it's a shot-for-shot remake. It's a different telling, reimagining, as I said. Right?
Yeah, and I think there was probably, and especially in the case of Batman, I think enough time had passed. What was it, the mid-90s and then the mid to late aughts before you got another... So I think there was enough time there.
Yeah.
And again, Batman and Robin left such a bad taste in people's mouths.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the concept of when we see really bad movies out there, we walk away from it, and then we leave some bad taste in our mouth. But what causes us to think of those movies that way? Like, is it because of the way that they were shot, or is it because of the way? Because we've been touching on it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, bits and pieces. But is it because of the way they were shot, or is it because of the story, or is it because of the timing? I think, for my money, it's often the case that it's actually the timing. I think there's a nostalgia factor there, and that's what usually creates the heavy distaste for it. Because if you look at Judge Dredd, for example, and then the remake Dredd. Okay, so Sylvester Stallone is pretty old at this point, right?
Yeah.
But, again, we talked about this a little bit, but there's this idea there that he was attached to the movie. So a lot of people didn't go and watch it because, from a timing perspective, they're thinking, well, he already made this movie. Why would he come back and reinvigorate this character, which we didn't like in the first place, right?
Exactly. Sylvester Stallone's still a pretty big name. He had sequelized Rocky and Rambo. It's making a comeback, right?
Yeah.
So if he's still a big enough name, maybe the studio's a little bit afraid to distance themselves from him. So if they think, hey, maybe if people think he's still associated with it, maybe that'll put some butts in the seats and get us some more bank off of it, right?
Right.
So I honestly think it's a bit of a marketing fail with that one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and a good example from my perspective of a movie that has a lot of nostalgia attached to it is the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? And even though that movie was made like a long time ago, like it was
80s or
it was over 30 years ago. They made a couple of sequels, but people don't think of the sequels. They think of the original story, right? So when Michael Bay comes in and recreates that, there's a lot of fear that he's gonna.
Because it's Michael Bay, right? He's gonna explosion everything.
He's gonna make everything really CGI laden and very action oriented, and not as much of the humor and the content. And I was gonna lead off of that into Ghostbusters, and you'll see why in a second. But
yeah, I've seen the trailer. I think that's where we go. But anyway, yeah, and I definitely agree with that. But if you, again, I would say to those people like, have you watched the original recently? Because it's really not that good.
Right.
It's a very much again a product of its time, and you're attached to it because you were a child at the time it came out,
right?
And so you have this certain idea in your mind of what it is, and it's really not. It's the same thing of when he adapted Transformers.
Yeah.
Wow, this isn't, maybe the first one's okay, the sequels are terrible, and it's like, have you watched the cartoon recently?
Like, it's
pretty awful.
Yeah.
Like, really, and same thing with G.I. Joe, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
so the movie can't be...
It's a half-hour toy commercial, that's all it was.
Really.
Yeah,
so with the Ninja Turtles, that's exactly my point, is I watched that movie, and in my mind, I think, oh, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen because I watched it so many times. It was almost a religious thing for me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the inherent problem.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying is
yeah.
You watch these movies and you enjoy them. It means something to you. It has value for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good movie.
Exactly.
Whereas with the Ghostbusters, same thing. I would still argue that Ghostbusters is a fantastic film.
Yeah.
But it's not a perfect film, and there isn't everything that you could do other things with it. You could explore other things with it.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody hates the not everybody hates, but a lot of people do not like the second one. I enjoyed the second one.
like
I thought it was good for what it was. I have seen the trailer. So I really, really, really want this movie to succeed. So all the idiot, misogynistic, sexist morons on the internet can, eat crow. But basically people will say you can't have a all-female cast be Ghostbusters. That's just ridiculous. It's patently ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I have seen the trailer, and it just seems, it seems like they've...
It might not work out, right?
Again, like, Hollywood homogenized it. Like, very, like, cookie-cutter black and white, like, bland take on it. Like, a lot of stereotypical humor, I didn't really find it all. And maybe it's not indicative, because a lot of the times, trailers not indicative of
the actual
product,
film, right?
Right?
Yeah, the guy that's directing, I don't know what the director's name is, I forget.
Is it Paul Feig?
Whoever the guy is that directed Spy, which I heard the Spy had terrible trailers, but was an excellent...
I heard it was really...
But it was a good film, right?
Yeah.
So with Ghostbusters reboot, maybe that's the problem, is that it was set up in a way that the trailer appeals to our nostalgia, and says, oh, this reminds us of the original Ghostbusters, but now it's with a new cast, which is female-driven, which is a really stupid marketing tool, if you ask me. Like, to separate the films with just that, I find that problematic. Right?
Yeah, and it should be, it's good because you want to get more diversity and stuff like that, but that's not how you should market it.
Right.
Like, then it just comes off as that's the only reason why you did it, as an attempt to market and make money that way, and that's super slimy. It really is.
Right.
But but again, one of the reasons why it might not be successful is maybe they're leaning a little too heavily on the nostalgia factor, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, again, so remakes, and that's another good point of why remakes can fail. They lean a little too heavy on the nostalgia. Have your own voice.
Well, and
have the jokes be intelligent. Like, I mean, there's absolutely that. That would be amazing.
That's the problem. The first movie, the original movie, wasn't a comedy. It was a science fiction that had improvised elements to it. It had comedic actors in it who weren't making a comedy. Like, it's the fact that they're comedic people that it makes it fun. Exactly. Whereas with this, these are all comedic actors who are making a comedy film. Or at least that's how it feels to me when I watch it.
Very slapsticky comedy, falling down stuff. It's just... Why? Like, everybody does that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and again, so I've read this a lot. It might be a little bit controversial. I have read a lot online where the three white women are scientists and the black character is not. She's the every woman and the very stereotypical black, the oh no you didn't, you know what I mean?
And that was going to be, and I didn't want to go into this too much, but that was the other problem I had with it, was that Ernie Hudson, the character who plays Winston Zeddemore, the actor who plays Winston Zeddemore,
right.
he's actually an everyman. He isn't a stereotypical homogenized Hollywood black man. He's just
he doesn't have all the black guy catchphrases.
He's just a guy in the movie who happens to not be a scientist. Whereas the character that they're portraying in this film is a stereotypical black woman, a stereotypical Hollywood black woman, which I have a problem with.
Very added, that sort of attitude.
Yes.
Yeah, that you again see in Hollywood, and perhaps don't as often see in real life. Mm-hmm. So I heard a lot of people, and again, comments on the trailer, even on YouTube, and they're like, why couldn't she be the scientist and one of the other ones be the everyman?
We could go into the problems of racism that exist in films, but I feel like that's a
different discussion for a different day, I think.
Right? Yeah. But I just wanted to use Ghostbusters as an example to show you, for our audience, as an example of a film that's coming out soon, that is a remake, that could be problematic for reasons other than...
other than we've already gone into, and perhaps even because of the ones we've already gone into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the trailer's like and what the finished product ends up being.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else that we should go over? Do you think we've covered it all this time?
Yeah, I think we've kind of...
Okay.
Again, in summary, really, remakes not always bad, not always good. There's a few things that make it successful, and a few things that can make it a failure. And really, it all comes down to quality and the angle with which you approach, and if you have your own voice, really, is how you can add value to it, I feel. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it for episode 3 of Crosstalk. I'm Tim,
I'm Chris.
and we're gonna sign off now.
Like this video, thoughts or concerns perhaps we didn't already bring up. I feel there are more films out there maybe we didn't cover, or issues perhaps that you'd like to delve into a little bit more. Feel free to comment below, like and share the video, or even better, subscribe to the channel. Until next time.
This is Crosstalk.
Good.
Good.